us. Yes. Come on, Mayor.
Thank you, Harriet. Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. Welcome, Coconino County Democrats. I'm excited to be able to stop by and just say hello to everybody, and also to make sure you guys know how exciting it is to see a group of people, such as yourselves, dedicated to this next election and to making some change, not only worldwide, but here in Coconino County and here in Flagstaff. So thank you.
Thought I'd get to sit a minute. We have two distinguished guests, and I'll introduce both of them in just a second. But first, I'd like to give you a couple of updates. Next month is March 15th, and our speaker is Tom Collins. He's from Clean Elections, and his topic will be how the money came in and how it went out in 2014 state elections. They've done the reports, they know where the money came from, and they know where it went. So he will be giving us a Clean Elections report on how money comes and goes out of Arizona elections. I don't know if any of you read the paper yesterday, but the legislature apparently passed a bill that made it illegal. Did it get past both houses? One house? One house, all right. But it's designed to stop cities and other districts and governing areas from preventing dark money to come in. The attempts are to regulate money, make you say who's giving it, how much it is, where it came from, and they have just passed preventive legislation to keep you from doing that at any level. They are just keeping it so honest for us, I can't believe it. Anyhow, the trouble and the reason I'm bringing up next month is that this room will be unavailable, and we're currently looking for another venue. If you have any suggestions, please tell me or Shauna, raise your hand. We're both scouring the area. We think we could go to Horseman Lodge, which is out where I live. Are you guys willing to drive? Okay. I go there all the time. It's where I live practically. So if we will have to change, so be sure and watch your notices and your notifications so you know where we will be having it. And that said, March 10th is what, Sally?
The Roosevelt Kennedy dinner, and I hope you'll all come because that's what supports us for the whole year. March 10th and March 5th is the deadline for making reservations.
See Sally if you want to take it. And the other thing is, does anybody have anything really cool for the silent auction? If you have something really cool, tell Sally that too.
We actually have a lot of donations. Oh, you do? We need is guests.
Guests, okay. Or good gifts, I don't know. Anyhow, I'm going to introduce both of our speakers so you can meet them, and we will have Dr. Weiser speak first while Kiana continues to collect signatures and schmooze. So Dr. Weiser will speak first, and I just want to make a few background remarks about him. He is a retired psychiatrist, so he says he doesn't talk psychiatry unless he gets paid for it. He has a law degree as well as a degree in psychiatry. He's done some work in forensic psychiatry and is a certified expert in the courts in 4 states in the West. It gives him, I like this phrase, it gives me some opinions on the subjects raised by the book. And the book he'll introduce, if you haven't heard about it, 27 psychiatrists look at President Donald Trump. I don't know if any of you guys have seen the book, but anyhow, that's the book he's looked at. He'll present his opinions as an over-the-hill retired psychiatrist, not as a reasoned professor of psychiatry. So he wants to have some fun with this. With no further ado, Dr. Weiser, please. Peter.
I don't know if I need the microphone or not. How well can you hear me?
Microphone's good.
Microphone's good.
All right. Well, I came prepared. I had my wife read what I was going to present to you guys, and she said it's a little bit professorial and might bore them. So I'm going to have to try some entertainment factor here that I'm not used to. So anyway, this is the book. I read most of it without getting sick. So basically, I'm going to talk a little about the book, or maybe a lot about the book, tell you what I think about it, and then there's some interesting things in sociology, psychology, and psychiatry that I think we really ought to be considering. Okay, first, my impression about the book. It appears to be a collection of articles by mental health experts, or self-proclaimed experts, that claim that Donald Trump's nuts. They spend a lot of time trying to diagnose him with personality disorders, paranoid disorders, character disorders, narcissistic disorder is obvious.
Hold the microphone.
Sure. Narcissistic personality disorder is probably first on their list. Then there's antisocial, paranoid, you name it. They also claim in certain sections that he might have, excuse me, he might have ADHD or beginning of dementia. The second half of the book's a little different. It basically is a look at his childhood and stuff, and says he's just a product of a disturbed environment. He's indulged, he's had an abusive parental relationship. His brother died of alcoholism. And basically, it comes from a very disturbed childhood background. Okay. I go beyond it and say that he's also a sexual predator and a serial adulterer and a chronic liar. So we've got a bully who's got personality disorders, perhaps. The major thrust of the book is, why are they saying all these things? And it looks like they think he should be dangerous to the society and to people, and as such, they have the duty to warn. Well, I looked at the duty to warn because I wanted to graduate from ASU, and I got some opinion about forensic psychiatry. And the problem is that this is covered by several different things. One is the Tarasoff law, and that is, in a doctor-patient relationship, you have a duty to warn a potential victim. And the courts further extended that you have a duty to protect a potential victim. However, the Tarasoff law is strictly for doctor-patient relationships. So if you analyze somebody and you say they're nuts and you haven't seen them, you violate the Goldwater Rule. And that was about Barry Goldwater, and this whole thing was brought up with Goldwater. And the American Psychiatric Association says, no, you must examine a person personally in a medical setting and establish a doctor-patient relationship. Anything else is unprofessional conduct. And I just happen to be on a board outside medical consultants, the state board of medical people, that when I get a troubled psychiatrist, they'll send me his charts, and then I get to make a judgment as to whether he's violated professional conduct or not met a standard of care. And so if these people have to, by law, be very careful about what they say, and they're not. So the other thing is, we got HIPAA regulations, and I think most of you are aware that that's a privacy thing established to rule by the government. And if you expose doctor-patient obtained information, you've just violated HIPAA laws. Now those are pretty strict. Each violation is worth $50,000 to the government. and they can go up to $1.5 million a year for violations. If you do it willingly, negligently, or recklessly, you can be jailed for up to 10 years. A federal crime. So, my advice to these people is, they're not giving a professional opinion. They have violated the HIPAA laws if they think they've established a relationship, and none of them have. They've violated Goldwater regulations, or whatever it is, and have committed unprofessional conduct. So we'd have to say that there are a whole bunch of people with political opinions who are ranting about who they think is a crazy, dangerous person. Well, the other little thing is that I have done a good deal of testimony in court, and you have to really have one specific identified potential victim, and it has to be doctor-patient, and there's no two ways about it. This is not a professional anything. So, by and large, as a psychiatrist and someone involved in forensic issues, it's pretty much meaningless. It violates, if they want to claim to be professional, they just violate it about everything they can. And if they actually examined him and presented this data, they could possibly go to jail. So, that's what the book is worth. Now, I was trying to get through this because my wife said all this factual stuff is pretty boring. So that there's one other thing we really need to look at, and it's not much more stimulating or entertaining, but it's the 25th Amendment. And they're saying that, oh, he's crazier than a loon, and he's going to be incompetent or incapable of handling his duties. Well, I brought the Constitution along in case you want to see it. There are some specific rules. First of all, the Vice President and the Cabinet, by a majority vote, have to declare him incompetent, and then it goes to the Congress, and they have to declare by 2/3 votes that he's incompetent, and it gets really difficult. Now, if the President objects and says, no, I'm competent, then it has to go back to Congress for a resolution, and it's a 2/3 vote, and you don't think that they could get 2/3 of any of our congressmen to say that, especially the Arizona people. So, basically, that's dead in the water. So, their claim that, oh, maybe we should declare him incompetent is just a totally specious argument. So now, you look at, can you have him impeached? Well, yeah, we've impeached 2 or 3 people, presidents. The process is difficult. First of all, you have to, there's a list of things that, like treason, bribery, major crimes, they have to be brought up as crimes. And oh, by the way, you can't civilly or criminally indict a president while he's sitting in office. They can be sued for prior acts, but you'll see pretty much that everything they do will be put off because the Supreme Court will declare this is a political issue, and it's up to Congress to do the trial. So, you get a very long process of the Attorney General's office has to be in charge, it goes through the judiciary committees, and it needs to go through the House, and that's the equivalent of indicting him, and then the trial is conducted in the Senate. Clinton was indicted in the House, but the Senate didn't actually do the jury part, say he was guilty. And then we could argue about that, but I don't think the book presents enough of an argument that we need to go into that. It may come about, but that's not today's talk. So, by and large, we got through the book. Now I'd like to just share my own beliefs with you. I don't think you need to know more about Tarasoff rules, Goldwater rules, and all that, and the HIPAA regulations, because that's not going to come up. But what would really be interesting is 49% of the presidents since 1776 through 1974 could be declared incapable of serving as president because of mental illness. I don't know if you knew that, but 49%, according to some researchers at a well-respected university, 49%. When you think about this, what is, like Lincoln was depressed, Kennedy, everybody loves Kennedy, he was addicted to opiates, he had chronic back pain. Lyndon Johnson was probably bipolar, or at least unipolar. And Nixon was paranoid and an alcoholic. It keeps going. So how do we keep electing these 49% of them being certifiably crazy by somebody? That's what interests me. And I've come up with a couple of things, and these things are all open for discussion. I think the bottom line is we have to look at why and how we as people can elect crazy presidents. And that's pretty serious. We seem to ignore self-interest at times, and we elect people that somehow connect emotionally to us. And why? And that's crucial. If we want to win this next election, we got to stop thinking about how to get rid of Trump and how to fix our psychopathology. We have a massive number of people that we don't agree with, at least I don't agree with. I'll call them crazy. So what? I've got a sign hanging in my bathroom that says, because you silenced a man doesn't mean you converted him. So we need to figure out what to do, how these people think, so we can do something about it. Now that, sociology, psychology, whatever you want to call it, we got to figure out how to change the minds of 48%, 49% of the population that actually voted for Trump. So, I'll give you some ideas. Let me just lead through here. There's a kinship rule, and that is that, and it's a sociological rule, that people will do things and sacrifice themselves and do all sorts of things so that their genes can be passed on and that they can have better children than they have themselves. Now that's kind of the academic rule. I spent a lot of time in the VA system, and I found out that people will sacrifice their lives for their friends and group members. Soldiers all the time sacrifice themselves for the good of their group. So it's not just sacrificing so your kids can get ahead. I think that can be expanded and generalized as a rule. Now, if this is true, people will vote against self-interest. They don't think, oh, we'll get Trump in there and we'll make it better for our children. Whatever their reasoning is, it defies logic. The other thing is ethnocentrism. That's where you believe that your group's the right group and everybody else is jerks and crazy and un-American and traitorous. So we have to, that's another sociological factor that we have to account for. How do we intervene in that? Some things that I think that are a bit controversial, but I believe. I think excessive devotion to faith-based thinking is exceptionally dangerous. This is where you can have alternate facts that aren't based on science or evidence or anything. So that encourages non-logical thinking. And it justifies all sorts of extreme views. If you're doing it for your religion or your in-group, or you're going to sacrifice your life for your kids, you can get pretty extreme. So this extreme polarized thinking may have something to do with ethnocentrism, kinship, relationships, faith-based thinking. You know, you think, oh, how bad can that be? It's good to have religion. Well, it is, but you know, when you sacrifice science and facts for totally faith-based thinking, it can be dangerous. Now, not my faith, of course. It's the radical Muslims that are off base, or the far-out cult-type religions we have. But, you know, it's not mine, of course. It's not ours. And that's the ethnocentrism. And, you know, we're all guilty of that. We're all vulnerable to it. But how do we further explore this? What do we want to do about it? Do we need more research? We've got people in this group that are probably experts in their field that would know a lot more about this than I would. So anyway, I'm trying to make it short enough so we can have the group get involved. So basically, that's it, folks. The book's full of crap. And you know, the real problem is us, is our neighbors, and maybe ourselves. Because we as Democrats can be as rabid as the rabid Republicans. So how do we all kind of moderate ourselves and get towards the center and have some government that compromises and functions on a pragmatic level? When I was a kid, I was a pragmatic Republican in Minnesota. Minnesota is wonderful. They had a lot of highly educated people. So, what's her name showed up? Shannon Buckman, what are her name?
Michelle Bachman.
Bachman? Well, even Minnesota's gotten perverted, in my opinion. So anyway, that's it. I'd love to have more participation from people in the audience. Anybody got anything to add? Okay.
Would the top two primary system of electing candidates, would the top two primary in Arizona be any way forward?
Well, the primary problem, I'm not sure I understand exactly what you said.
Well, California and I think state of Washington have a system of election where the top two primary candidates go on to the general election. And it has a tendency, according to the theory, that you get more middle-of-the-road candidates coming into your general election than we currently have. Currently, a partisan candidate has to appeal to their extreme to get elected in the primary. So you end up with candidates that are not middle of the road.
I think the fear in Arizona using that system is that it's already so dominated by Republicans and Republican money. Not necessarily the number registered, but that we would end up with just two Republican choices. Yeah.
Addressing your remarks and bringing up the Goldwater Rule, and I'm assuming in your remarks that you endorse the Goldwater Rule in terms of the... Now, but my question is that you've read the book. What do you think was the primary motivation of the professionals that wrote the book and wanted to put that out to the public? And they know that they violated that.
I'm not really sure.
Yeah, you've read the book, right?
Yes. Their ability to make a diagnosis from literature and observation is certainly potentially valid. Do I think that they're wrong? No. I think their diagnoses are probably right on. Should they be considered medically is the real question. And we have rules in medicine, and we have to follow them. If we get where we follow whatever turns us on, we can have chaos in medicine, and it's probably not a good thing.
I thought maybe in the foreword of the book, they collectively made that statement that they're overriding their clinical professional ethics because they want to make sure that that gets out there, that information gets out there.
Yes, but I didn't necessarily want to say that they were just ranting away politically. They wanted to get their opinions out there. Were they justified? Not by the law, but we have the right of free speech, so I endorse that. I just think that if they're going to make medical pronouncements, they really ought to follow the rules.
I would just, because that takes a fantastic amount of courage to sit there and violate your own professional culture and be subjected to possible, you made the statement that they're violating the law, they must have a tremendous amount of courage or personal conviction to say, I'm moving out of that because it's essential.
Well,
I'm getting your psychiatric opinion on that.
I think that I save them that embarrassment because they don't have to claim that they're bringing it up in court. They don't have to claim that it has medical legitimacy. They're claiming that that's their opinion. That's how I get them off the hook. I mean, they don't say they've examined the patient and they've found him to be a narcissist, a malignant narcissist, bully, sexual predator, you name it. They're not really making
So
it.
they'll have a good attorney if they go into court.
Well, the other thing is, nobody will bring them there. There's too much controversy about the Goldwater Rule, whether it should be followed or not. And on a practical basis, it will never happen. Going back to, more comments.
2 points. Is there any sort of exception in your medical rule practice for people who hold this much power over an entire society? I would imagine that there might be some clearance to warn against somebody who can affect this many people with their damage. And aside from that, I completely agree with you that this is all kind of hearsay, whatever. This isn't going to be what ultimately fixes our problems. And I'd love to have a discussion about what you think we can do as a society to kind of root out the deeper problems as to why these sorts of people get elected.
Yes, that's sort of the basis of what my most interesting thing is, how do we fix ourselves?
Well, no, I would, you know what I was going to ask is, can we let Kiana come talk, because she's running for an office where there might be some input from her side as a candidate, is what I'm thinking. Kiana? Yes. You ready to go? Did you hear what I was just saying?
Can we come back to it?
Yes.
People out there. We'll come back. Okay.
Yeah. The reason I say that is because we have a candidate here who's eminently sane and also well-trained and running for the Corporation Commission. And Kiana Sears is here from Phoenix. She drove all the way up here to talk about her candidacy, why she's running, and our question to you is, are you batshit crazy?
You know what, some mornings I think this is absolutely crazy. What you have to do as a candidate to actually go out and make it happen. But I love going out and meeting people. So that part is the part that keeps me sane, actually connecting with you, talking to people across the state. Again, my name's Kiana Sears, and I'm your candidate for the Arizona Corporation Commission. I'm thrilled to be here, and why? I'm going to start with the why. Why I chose to jump into this race. This race is a big race. It's a statewide race, but it's one of those races where you have to educate a lot. So I did pass out some flyers that give a little information about the Corporation Commission, because I never assume that everyone where I go know what it does, because it does a lot. It's the fourth branch of our government, and a lot of Arizonans don't get it, that we the people created the Corporation Commission because it was supposed to protect the ratepayers, make sure that you can go and start your new business there, get yourself going as a new business owner, and actually once you're a business owner, if you have any dealings that deals with securities, it was going to protect us against all securities fraud. So the Corporation Commission, at its inception, was a protection agency for all consumers. But we know in the last decade, the Corporation Commission has been filled with corruption and become not that for the people, but those of corporate and corporate interests. So what's been going on in my life that last 10 years? For most of it, I've been at the Corporation Commission working as an executive consultant, water and wastewater. So I can say before you with all confidence, I've been in more meetings at the Corporation Commission than any other candidate that will probably stand before you in the last decade, because for a decade, I was in as a staffer in the meetings where when you're a staffer, you hear everything because you're almost invisible. So all politicians who are elected say what they need to say, all self-interest say what they need to say and want to say, and you hear it, and me as a person who's a community advocate sometimes cringed when I heard the conversations, because over and over my job was to write the reports, to say and to testify for Arizonans and the protection of Arizonans. I would do the hard work, I would travel the whole state, come back, bring the recommendation, write the executive testimony, which I every single time had to testify to, and make the recommendations to not increase rates on our consumers, and then time again, we would see those increases. And one thing that I want to say also that's unique about my candidacy is I want to let you know there are very honest people with integrity working every day at the Corporation Commission that are disheartened that their hard work and public service to you is actually being made a mockery of. And as I sat with my former executive assistant, because I did have an administrative assistant that worked for me when I did the work that I did there at the Corporation Commission, I would sit with her and talk to her and watch her as a single mom struggle to pay her bills, help me write recommendations to not increase our utility bills, and then at the end of the day, the commissioners decided to rule in favor of corporations. So, year after year, I sat there watching this happen, and I had a pivotal moment that changed my life. I'm a little bit over 40 now, and I planned a big 40th birthday to go to a safari, do some great things with my best friend. 6 months before our 40th birthday, my best friend had a heart attack. And life changed for me forever. I started thinking about why I got into public service. My background in public service started with the Children's Action Alliance. I thought I was going to be the world's best social worker. I started with the Children's Action Alliance, going out and watching the interests of children and everything that was happening. One of the little secrets that Arizona seemed to not blast and let people know, because it was just egregious, when Sheriff Joe decided to start Tent City, that left a space open at Durango Jail. And that space is where we housed children when we got them out of CPS custody. That's what brought me to public service in the way that I am now. As a social worker, I couldn't believe that was the policy. So I got together with a grassroots group of people to start lobbying at the legislature on our so-called off time. And I did it 3 days a week. So finally, Carol Kamen, who is the founder of Children's Action Alliance, came to me and asked me, Kiana, what are you doing with your life? And I was like, I'm a social worker, but Carol, I need to take the time 3 days a week to go to the legislature to talk to them about this ridiculous policy and what they're doing. So she helped me and mentored me into understanding that I was a person who needed to be writing policy and raising my voice. So what I did, I buckled down. I went back to ASU, that's where I graduated from, and I actually got a degree, and my master's is in public administration. So I started off at the Senate, and I am a policy wonk, a proud policy wonk, because policy is what really matters. That's what we make the difference, and we have to uphold policy every single day. So my first bill that I was the co-author of was the Baby Safe Haven bill. So back to the actual changing what I first got involved with, children, there is a respite law now that one of our legislators actually brought forward. Well, children can no longer be stored in the jail. They're supposed to be stored in a home. But often, there's no homes available. So you've heard stories about children sleeping on the floor at buildings because there's not space, but that's a far cry better than being stored at the jail. So we have changed that policy to have respite care. So flash forward, still involved with the Family Services Committee in the Senate. The Baby Safe Haven bill is what I passed for the state of Arizona. Arizona was one of the last states to have such a bill. So now when you go to the fire station, go to the hospitals, you go, a mother can come and surrender a child rather than put it in a dumpster or any egregious thing like that. Because it costs first, it starts the child off in a terrible space because they're started off not just in a disadvantage, but health disparities happen because of that. The mother walks away not being cared for, and that baby is $1 million baby because of not receiving care. That's why that was so important to me. So I tell you, with my background, the two things that are most important to me, Arizona's future, that includes our children, and water. I care about energy, I care about solar, but water has been the backbone of my life, caring about water, because for 30 years, my mother worked for a water and sewer company in our city, and she did municipal things. So I knew as an 8-year-old what a meter reader was, because it was important to hear all these conversations, because that's how food got put on our table. Because my father was a disabled veteran, so my mom was the breadwinner in our family, and did all the hard work, and got up every day and taught me how to work hard. That's why no matter what event is happening in the state of Arizona, if it takes for me to get in my Honda and drive, I am there. I will drive 10 hours, 4 hours, 3 hours, 2 hours, because this matters to me. And it's not a vanity campaign in no shape, form, or fashion. And I say that because we're talking about the insanity that happens when you decide to throw your head in the ring, and some people think it's notoriety and glamorous. It's not. I stand before you today with all these extra clothes on because I live in the valley and I'm not used to wearing all these clothes. So I bought some extra pants, got pants under here and all these things. But the main thing I thought about today and just being vulnerable is I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm already overweight, I'm gonna put these clothes on, and I hope there's not a camera, but there's one. So if it was up to me, I would wait till I lost weight from my first candidacy to start again. But what brings me to the table right now, this time, this hour, this election cycle, is I watched the two last candidates. I supported them. I canvassed for them. I collected signatures. I collected fives. I did all those things, and we weren't able to be successful. And I don't believe in giving up. I told you that I'm actually a school board member in Mesa, and I am the first person of color to serve on the school board in Mesa. Mesa is the largest minority majority school district in the state of Arizona. We have 68,000 children and have never had any minority representation on our school board. So there's many voices being silent, not just African American voices, but there's a large Latino population. There's a large Native population that gets pushed aside in my school district. So I decided to run, and I won in Mesa, Arizona, with 53,750 votes. That's a lot of votes for a school district. So I can tell you that it didn't come easy. I knocked doors 6 hours a day, even when it was 117, because we do go through the summer here in Arizona with shingles. which was probably the most interesting thing. And sometimes it was hilarious, but and especially if it wasn't happening to me, I would have laughed a whole lot. Because one of the things I had to say when I would go to the door is, I'm running for Mesa School Board. Do you have any children? Because I can't be around children because I have shingles. And they were like, what? So that's why I had to announce myself to let them know. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, can you comment on the influence that APS has on the election of corporate commission people and the decisions that the corporation commission makes?
Yes, ma'am. I will get right into that. So you know a little bit about me, why I'm running, coming to the race, and I'm running as a clean elections candidate just for that. When I talk about corruption, it's about your commissioners being bought and basically hired to do the bidding of corporations. And APS, that entity, is often talked about time and time again. And I speak to APS. But it's more than APS we have to be concerned with. Gary Pierce is being indicted and was indicted, and his wife was indicted. It wasn't APS. It was Johnson Utilities, which is right in my backyard. The issue is we're not electing commissioners with integrity that have our self-interest, that's willing to get up early every morning and work for you. That's why I'm running, because I have the special knowledge. I'm not just locally certified in energy regulation, I'm federally FERC regulated. So FERC is a Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. What happens at the Corporation Commission is, it takes a lot of money to run a statewide race, especially if you want to do commercials. The amount of money that you get as a clean elections candidate will never buy commercials and get that messages out there. So you have corporations that invest money, and when you take money from someone, just like any fair exchange or dirty or secret money exchange, you now are beholden to that person you take money from. And that has happened for the last decade in the Arizona Corporation Commission. What has that cost us? Losing all of the grounds that we made when it comes to renewables, solar energy, and all the things that we could do. Like, we have enough solar here in Arizona to harness that solar, not just to reduce all the bills of Arizonans, but to export to places like Seattle that don't have the benefit of our sunshine, putting that energy back on the grid. So with that, there's also been an attack on solar to make it where people who got it, so now there's a grandfather clause. If you're not grandfather, you're paying more, you're paying fees, you're paying all of these things. But at the bottom of the day, at the end of the day, what it's about, representing and protecting the consumers. And what, like I said, this day, this time brought me to the table, being a school board member, two things collided in my experience. One, being August and September, is when we have the most expensive energy bills here in Arizona. That's when all of our children and all of our young people start school. We are 49th in the nation when it comes to school funding and what we're doing here in Arizona when it comes to our children and school. So now our children are also coming to school because of economic burden that's happening because of energy bills, not prepared for school. When do families that struggle start getting prepared for school? October. So they've missed August, September, and they're just starting in October, and some are waiting till November, because that's when Black Friday sales come, and that's when the energy bills are now lower. So my fight is lowering utility bills for all of us. I'm a mother. I have a 23-year-old and a 21-year-old, so when you look at me, you could probably tell I don't have that much age. So that means I was a mother walking around ASU with a double stroller with both of my daughters. Because my daughters are 2 years apart, and I started off as a teenage mom, and college is what we do in our family. So I went to college with my two kids. They didn't do daycare, not because I was opposed to daycare. We couldn't afford it. So we pushed along, we got along, and we did all those things. So I know what it's like to make those decisions. And hard-working families should never have to decide between the things that they need for their children to have a successful education and to be able to afford utility bills. That's why I'm running. There is a question, I'll take the question and...
Well, let's do the Q&A now.
Okay.
Both of you. So go ahead and get yours, but then let...
We'll do it together.
Let people
Yeah.
do it together. Go ahead.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm a fifth generation Arizona.
Yes, ma'am.
I've watched my state go from less than $1 million to over $7 million. When are we running out of water?
Water is super important.
Yeah.
And here's what the issue is with water. I'm gonna say something that might surprise you a little bit when it comes to running out of water. There is water that we can actually get access to. And that water is actually what our native sisters and brothers, our native tribes actually have water that would actually help us not just serve who we currently have, but serve an additional 1 million Arizonans. So we're talking about droughts, we're talking about curtailments, because we have pecan growers that are coming in and we're treating them as if they're people and not corporations. They're paying pennies for the water. Then there's alfalfa growers that's taking the water and siphoning the water and exporting over to Europe. So there's many ways that our water is actually being stolen from us and taken away. But when it comes to drought, we have done something that's great, and I'm going to try to make this really quick. In 2016, we got 3 progressive Democrats on the Water Conservation Board. That is our ticket to win with the Arizona Corporation Commission, elect someone like me that cares for working for you, and actually then connect with our federal government to actually allow native tribes to have utility companies and give access and infrastructure so we can actually have access to that water that would shore up our future. Because we are not in first position with the Colorado River.
But if the Native Americans are controlling our water, can't they raise rates to whatever rate they want to charge us?
Here's the situation. When it comes to making agreements, there's interconnection agreements that happen. So right now, when you look at how geographically all native tribes are around our state, it's in between land, above grade. So interconnection agreements and policy exists to actually control what happens. Right now, what the loss of control that we have at the Corporation Commission is commissioners are not working and enforcing policy that protects us, policy that already exists. So we have good policy. If you roll back and look at the policy that's on the books, it's not being enforced. And most of all, at the Corporation Commission, most people don't know, there's an entire division that is placed to protect us, the consumer. What is that division doing right now? Not a lot. Because there hasn't been a big push to do that. The other part of the Corporation Commission that exists that's really important to me is fines. When business owners do not turn in their annual reports on time, there's fines. And those fines comes into millions of dollars. How is that money spent? The commissioner gets to decide where that money goes. Right? And my thing is, I would like that money to go into the arts for our children in the state of Arizona. Not send, and most people think I would say, send it to K-12 funding. No, because it ends up at the legislature. And I just feel like that, it just evaporates. So the controls that the commissioners who will honestly work like myself with integrity to protect us are there. We need to call them to task. We need to elect the right people to do that. The whole reason the Corporation Commission exists is to protect the ratepayers. Go on the website, I can send you some information, and that's what you have.
So what do we do about our growth? I mean, if we can, what do we do about the outrageous growth of Arizona?
I love being here.
I love being here too. I mean, I'm just saying, if we can only hold, if we've only got water for so many, what in the world is going to happen to this state?
Currently in the state of Arizona, as we have people migrate in, we have people migrate out.
And it's very hot.
there is not only the heat, but our education standing right now is doing us great favor with people leaving, but also not attracting the jobs and everything that we need. Arizona is a wonderful state, and I believe with the ebb and the flow, we can use our resources wisely. And unfortunately, our children are leaving when they grow up because of all of the different, I guess you'd say, complexities that we have with our family not having fifth generations Arizonans. That's not typical right now because our children are growing up and leaving. Because for me personally, it's important for me that my children stay. So here in Mesa, Arizona, we were the first state to vote for, we were the first municipality to vote for not-for-profit prisons. My daughter worked to say for-profit prisons is not how we should be going in the state of Arizona. So she's currently running for justice of the peace. That's how I've decided to keep her in Arizona. Because she said, I believe in educating and not incarcerating. And we believe as our family, it's not about whining and crying about it, get in the fight. That's why I'm standing before you today, to ask for your vote. I passed some materials out today. Again, I am a clean elections candidate, so usually you would have all the fives going around. I've collected all the fives that I need. So what I'm doing today is asking you if you can donate seed money. I would greatly appreciate it. That's what keeps me on the road, keeps me going everywhere that I need to go and doing the things that I need to do, buying the literature. But most important, I am here asking you for your vote in the primary because I am working for you. This is why I'm here, taking my life's blood, sweat, and tears, because right now, that's what it is, because I am totally committed to this race, and I'm all out. I don't have a cushy job to go back to because I resigned from the Corporation Commission and have been working for citizens ever since. So that's what I've been doing for the last 2 years. So thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, and I need your support. If you haven't signed my petition, please do. But if you have signed for 2 other candidates, that's okay. I am asking for your vote. Sears for the Arizona Corporation Commission is who I am. My first name is said Kiana, but remember Sears. That's what matters.
Okay, next.
Okay, back to where we were.
Back to where we were.
Whatever you want.
Why don't we have more
Sure.
safety
I agree with you that Trump is a symptom. These school shootings are a symptom of our society. But what is your professional opinion as a psychiatrist for your diagnosis of our larger society? What is our diagnosis?
We have, my off the cuff
Yeah.
opinion is that we have a lot of non-logical reasons for how we vote and how we act. And until we really understand what's in the hearts and minds of our voters, we're gonna get all sorts of weird stuff. I mean, why this guy should be elected when everybody knows what a rascal he is? We gotta figure that out.
You know, so much of it is about what the candidate just spoke about, and that's education, and what you talked about in education. And part of our process, you nailed on the head. And with all due respect, because I am very fortunate to have been raised in a rich religious household, exposing me to many different of the world's religions, it was very interesting for me in the last summer to have met a man who worked for the FBI, who wrote a book called All Fish Have Bones. And he prefaced the book saying that he may offend some of his friends who are very strong believers, who believe that a book that was written 2,000 years ago by primarily men, that did not necessarily have a regard for women as equals, is something that many people live by today. Granted, there are many wonderful attributes thereof, but the myth component you brought in, you didn't say it, as opposed to science, asked us to base our education on fact, or perhaps an extension of that fact in somebody else's eyes at a given time, with intentions and purposes. So it all boils down to what, again, we've all know in our state, we're at the, next to the bottom of the bucket in education. Educating people is the road to the future. And unless we can compel others to educate themselves, listen to both sides of the story, and based on perhaps the Golden Rule, that we make these decisions and say, is it all right for me to take my wife to go see Wimbledon? And all these different things that we're seeing today is the new normal. We've got to look at how we educate people in an honest way, and part of it I look to, whereas many of us say in the Pledge of Allegiance, with liberty and justice for all, the cost of liberty is justice. And unless we have justice that says that this is okay and that's not okay, we need to base our education on fact, on science, and perhaps that guy is a Neil Bluegrass or Neil deGrasse or whatever the case may be. But each of these individuals who's represented themselves in this book does so on a professional basis without having, as you indicated, that personal relationship with the individual they are assessing. And when we hear the new truth of Donald Trump, I brought an article from the New York Times, it was out a couple of weeks ago. We have to ask the question, what is right and what is not? And we've got to engage, as I was talking to Sally, young people who've had that kind of value-based education and that exposure to make our judgments based thereupon.
Next.
I'll speak very loudly, so I'm going to slow it up because I hope people really hear this. I took Psychology 101 back in maybe 1974. And one of the things I remember from it was the number one rule of psychology, my professor said, was that people who do crazy things are not necessarily crazy. And on behalf of myself and batshit crazy people everywhere, I'd like to say that mental illness is not synonymous with criminality or inhumanity or bad behavior. And I think to discuss Trump and Ryan and all of those people in terms of their mental illness as a really big disservice to those of us who are mentally ill. You're much more likely to be the victims of mental illness than we are to be the perpetrator, or the victims of crime and all of that, than we are to be the perpetrators of it. We're not the ones who go around making everybody else's life a living hell, frankly. So I would love to see that discussion stopped. Let's talk about school shootings and presidents and everybody else. The 49% of presidents who were mentally ill, supposedly, maybe in terms of how mental illness can be a superpower. You know, it can be a personal strength, right? It can be if you're under certain situations. So,
Well, my personal experience is that normal is to be a little bit crazy. I mean, we really don't have normal people in our society. It's a mathematical or a statistical evaluation that's so normal and it's falling on the bell curve somewhere. So that leaves a lot of openness to variations.
Since you mentioned my profession, which is a sociologist, I'm a professor emeritus at NAU, but I've been conducting about a 2.5-year study, a participant observation study, both within the Bernie campaign and in the Trump campaign. Now, I want to address this issue of why people vote the way they do, and I'm particularly focusing on the Trump supporters. There is one hell of a lot of anger, and the resulting fear, a tremendous amount of fear. And by the way, this is both the left and the right, and an extreme disillusionment in terms of what has been going on, and the widening gap between the wealthy and the rest of us. But that fear and that anger can go in different directions, and we all know historically from readings of Germany or whatever in the background that a good demagogue if they can address those fears and pull those fears in, then they're going to get a vote and they're going to get an endorsement. So I think I'm a Democrat, but I'm going to indict the Democratic Party for neglecting that population for one hell of a long time and moving into what I call the elites, that we need money, we need to go to Goldman Sachs, we need to address these different interests. Now, Trump is the one damn hell of a hypocrite by saying he's going to drown the swamp, and then what he does is put in crocodiles instead of alligators. But the point I'm trying to say, that anger, that frustration is out there, and until it's addressed, and I hope the Democratic Party can do that, then we're in some deep shit.
Thank you. Sociology was my first love. Eddie?
I have a question.
Yes.
This is sociology, but you're doing the personal level, and Dave is talking at 30,000 feet. How do you connect a healthy attitude and a rationalistic scientific approach, which we've never had really in politics? How do you begin to connect those two politically?
Well, I'm convinced that anger is just more of finding out what's in the hearts and minds of the people who vote irrationally.
Okay.
I mean, why should some scumbag get elected president when everybody knows that he's a scumbag?
Because my Trump-loving friends say they wanted something completely different. They wanted to wipe out the status quo. So if he's a jerk, he's a jerk. They love him. Love him.
People love.
Well, it's...
Love.
I think there's a strong anti-establishment character to tearing down government, making government smaller. Anti-government folks, states' rights people, the Make America Great Again, and as far as I can tell, is a code word for make it white Christian American again. Male American again. 1950s all over again. Why is this selling so well? Fear, anger, those are motivators. That's what we have to find out. We need more sociologists like this telling us, hey, maybe my study shows such and such. And then we have to listen to it at election time. Because we really need to win over the hearts and minds of these people.
And I'm going to go back to Kiana. I think Kiana put her finger on it, which is the influence of money now. If people with money and marketing skills realize that fear and anger win elections, that's where they put their money. And we don't have any tools. We've got persuasion, we've got good candidates, we've got people with good motivations, and we do not have the money to run the negative ads that make us out to be the bad guys. That's, to me, it's the money issue, and our state legislature, I began this by saying, is just trying now to stop us from examining where the money comes from and how it's used. So, to me, money is fueling and is the gasoline that feeds the anger and fear that produces demagogues.
Well, one of the things that I was going to say in here is that we have a plutocracy. We're pretty much ruled by the money classes. And Trump, if he could, would lead us toward fascism. Now, if we can, just as an example, if we use those kinds of words to frame an argument, we're going to tap into people's fears then. If you identify the wrong path they're on, maybe they'll come back from it. I mean, Germany and Italy and a lot of countries get swayed by fascism. It's a strong leader who's in it for himself. Go ahead.
Our state is more susceptible to dirty money, dark money, than almost any other state. And Terry Goddard has a petition that he's trying to get on the ballot, and there are a lot of petitions circulating. I have 2 more slots on this one against dirty money. It's a pretty simple formula for anybody getting $10,000 or more has to disclose the sources, and the Clean Elections is the arbitrator. So I would appreciate you signing somebody's petition, fill mine up.
Okay, but my point
I'd also
is,
have one for anyone who wants to sign.
my point is that we're angry about that because we're not getting the money. Now we gotta figure out how to motivate rich liberals to give us money. And then we'll have an even, that's kind of the law. You go to court, your attorneys battle it out in court on
Can
more or
I
less
make a
equal.
comment about the fear and
Yes.
stability? One of the things that I noticed, when you talk about fear, the other side of fear is not being afraid. To actually standing up with confidence, saying, and actually giving people a sense that there are actually, that you're gonna take the responsibility and have a strong claim that goes forward. So when we talk about liberals, we talk about a lot of compassion, and then of course we're talking about social work, we talk about compassion and love and all of those things. But our strong stance, and when it's being strong on everything we do, is one of the things that doesn't resonate loud enough. So when you talk about, and you talk to some of those Trump supporters, it was, they felt a confidence in that Trump wasn't going to be afraid to do anything, which we saw any and everything. So we have to make sure that we don't say the thing, that we have to get the language of fear out of part of our platform. Because I hear in our platform, we were so afraid, we don't know what's going to happen. We're so afraid this is going to happen, or that's going to happen, or I'm afraid we're going to run out of this, I'm afraid this is going to happen, and that's the, we have to have the confidence that we, the people who make the government and are the government, will be confident that we're taking it back. And actually have that strong stance to actually do it. Because why Democrats win is we are people power. Not just people doing something, but people power. People who are willing to get up and go out there and canvass when it's 117. In my area, the reason why we win, and because I'm in a very conservative area, is because the Democrats who win there canvass all the time. And Republicans in that area don't. They send mailers, which go to trash. So people get to know who we are. So that's what I want to say.
Can we get back to this lady's thing about water? When we're asked as Democrats, what are we going to do about an obvious future shortage of water? Well, we can't say we're going to buy it from the Indian tribes, because that doesn't work. So we got to come up with answers. And if we don't have answers, the people who come up from APS saying, well, we'll build another dam, we'll buy saline tainted water and clean it. We got to come up with some answers. We can't just say, well, we'll make some negotiated settlement somewhere.
But that settlement actually agreed. It actually exists. It's out there. We've had a plan for 7 years to do it. We haven't been able to get on the same page and actually do it.
Yeah.
You go from Parker
We might
to...
be able to get on the same page.
What's helping us get on the same page is the Democrats that have been elected in these powerful places. We never had so many progressive Democrats on the Water Conservation Board, which right now, one of the things that they're talking about is not only doing that, but looking at our position that we currently have with the Colorado River. We're in second position. We have everything it takes to be in first position, but we've never done it. Because it's been in the best interest to ignore it and do all of these things that give corporations money.
And who
I
talks
would
about
like
this?
to, get away
Who
from
made that law?
the politics of fear and despair and stop talking about how they have all the money and so we can't win. And instead talk about how we have all the people. Because that's what happened in Alabama. That's what happened in Missouri. And it's happening We have more people canvassing on the streets than we have ever had. I just was at my dentist this morning. He showed me his new voter registration card. He's been a Republican for 40 years. He and his wife and daughter have all re-registered as Democrats. That's because I just talked to him gently for a year.
That's called.
Yeah, in between crowns. So, you know, and I know that Greta and lots of people here have been out on the streets. If every one of us can get 5 people who've never voted before or who have voted Republican, we can win this. It's that simple.
Any more comments?
Is that how you win?
I think that we do the people-oriented, that always helps. But we need how to win the minds and hearts of the people in the middle. That's just kind of basic math. We have to get those people. The diehard Republicans, it'd be awfully nice if we could convince Tea Party people to think more liberally. But, you know, they're still fighting a civil war. So my interest is to use science, to use sociology, use psychology, all this, all the educational things that we have at our disposal. If we learn to use them, we might win a few hearts and minds.
I'll probably be a downer here. But our democracy is under attack.
Yes.
The U.S. House of Representatives just voted to disband the Election Assistance Commission, which tests our voting equipment. They're trying to do everything they can to do away with it. We have our own Representative Thorpe, who's introduced legislation to stop students from voting. He's also now pushing a bill where if you change, when you re-register to vote, if you don't update your motor vehicle driver's license within a short period of time, your driver's license is going to be canceled. They are attacking us from every way. So this election, I cannot stress enough how critical it is for the work that all of you are doing. They are trying to do away with our democracy. They really are. It's under attack like no time I've ever seen. And they're trying to stop the people power through dark money, through changing the process. Our legislature also voted one of the houses to have our Senate candidates decided by the legislature, not voted by people. I mean, it is so critical right now that we turn this around. Or we're not going to be living in a democracy very much longer. So thank you for all the work you do. Sorry to be a little bit of a downer. But it is really important that we change our state legislature, we change our Congress, and eventually our president.
And Patty, a little fear goes a long way. I have fear of Republicans, so.
You do know Patty Hansen. Everyone in the room knows who just spoke, right?
No.
No? Patty Hansen is our county recorder and elections officer. She is the Coconino County guru of elections. So thank her for being peerless in defending us against the people who would take away our vote. And it is critical, absolutely critical, that we change the Arizona legislature. Kim?
The precinct committee folks in the room, Patty will be with us on Saturday at our monthly meeting. Patty always has amazing content and information for us, so we'll see.
I'll be more upbeat.
We're going to give her happy pills. I'm going to call on Sue in just a moment. Is there anyone here who is not a precinct committee person who would like to volunteer? And if so, please see Kim and he'll tell you the process. The more people we have going door to door, Kiana has already told us how to do it. We don't get the heat, but we do get the good weather. You go door to door, you get to know your neighbors, and you do it all the time. You don't just do it in October. That's one magic bullet. Sue Strobel has words for us.
I do, as usual. I know you're all thinking about the Florida massacre. How can you not? My process is I get teary, and then I absorb the shock, and then I get furious, which transfers, I hope, into resolve. What made me madder is watching hypocritical Rick Scott, Marco Rubio, oh, we're going to do everything we can do. And of course, Trump didn't even mention the word gun, didn't even mention it, but he's going to help too. If you believe that, there's a bridge I want to sell you. There's a man in the legislature who will not allow a bump stock bill to even be heard in his committee. His name is Eddie Farnsworth.
He's also blocking the ERA from coming to the floor. The ERA has been submitted again. He's also blocking that. Eddie's from Mesa, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, good guy.
He threatened to throw Kathy out of the meeting. She was testifying, he threatened to throw her out of the meeting because she asked him why he wouldn't allow it to happen.
Yeah, well, he's one of those Republicans. They have to go. They have to go. And please keep pressure on these people. You can find their number. I have his number. Say that you want to have this bill heard. He's chair of the Public Safety and Judiciary Committee, unfortunately. And the bill was proposed, of course, by Democrats, Randall Freeze and another gentleman. But we've got to keep the pressure on them, and then we're going to vote them out. Okay. Eddie Farnsworth.
Talk about fear. It's their fear of standing up to the NRA that has us in 18 school massacres in 2 months.
Yeah. Yeah, it's completely horrible, and the answer to the problem is go away NRA, and you can do that by voting these candidates out.
The Republicans get money from the NRA and they support NRA policies because if they don't support the NRA policies, they get primaried in the next election. I guess you've all picked up on this, that the real threat for a congressman or a legislator anywhere is if you don't follow the rules of the NRA, they run somebody against you and they give all that money to them. And then you lose. And you just do what they say or you lose at the next election. So it's a pernicious system. I think it's systemic, but one way to start the change is to vote and change it, for Pete's sake. Anyway, enough. It's wonderful to see you. See you next time. We'll hear about clean elections. We'll hear more about the money. And I will be sure and watch for your notification where we will have it. As I said, Shauna has talked with Horseman's Lodge. They said they could host us, so we will let you know when we make it a good decision. And we want to thank Peter. Better parking. All us East Siders. Thank you, Peter Weiser. Thank you, Kiana. Thank you. Thank you for the long drive. Bye-bye.